Hello there, and welcome to the Scruffy Looking Nerd Hitters podcast. I am, as always, your host, Tyler, bringing you news on all things nerd and geek related. And this week is stacked with gaming news, but I also have a few tidbits of movie news as well. So, here we go. First up on the gaming report, according to Jason Schreier from Kotaku, who responded to a tweet about the possibility of a new Knights of the Old Republic game in the future, BioWare has repeatedly asked to revive the Star Wars game series under EA, but have had no luck in doing so. Quoted, he says, "They've tried to make it happen." He went on to say, "More than once from what I've heard," but he didn't extrapolate any further details at that time. But as of recording this, Jason Schreier has clarified his tweets about BioWare, stating that he can't believe that this entire news story was developed around a single response tweet to someone's question. One of his biggest complaints was from a YouTuber named Yong Ya, and he released a statement to him stating that perhaps EA isn't strong-arming the developer, but rather perhaps the pitches and prototypes just weren't that great. Perhaps the pitches and prototypes fizzled out like many other pitches and prototypes do. Perhaps BioWare found itself unable to divert resources for new projects. Perhaps EA Studios' politics got in the way, and executives at another EA studio took issue with the idea of BioWare making a Star Wars game when the studio had its own ambitious Star Wars games to worry about. Perhaps all of EA's execs and studio heads disagreed about the approach for Star Wars, and at the end of the day, only one person in the room could win the argument. Perhaps EA's leadership isn't interested in single-player RPGs anymore. Perhaps BioWare's leadership wanted to focus on its own IP, rather than having to work out with yet another outside party with Disney/Lucasfilm, which might require very difficult and time-consuming approval processes that not everyone wants to deal with. Perhaps both EA and BioWare leadership really wanted to make Kotor 3, but Disney/Lucasfilm didn't. Perhaps BioWare thought they could make a good enough Kotor 3 for $100 million, but EA execs said, "Hey, we'll give you $50 million," and they were at an impasse. Perhaps EA's execs said, "Well, okay, but what's your version of FIFA's Ultimate Team?" And BioWare couldn't come up with a good enough answer. Perhaps BioWare's execs didn't want to do it. Perhaps both EA and BioWare are waiting for a better time. So, that was his response. Well, a snippet of it. I didn't want to read the whole thing. It was a fairly long response. But now all of this isn't to say that EA execs still aren't to blame. As we've seen within the past few weeks with canceled games, they have only handled the Star Wars license completely poorly. Now, going through some of his points that he tried to make, it is highly possible that some of these could have been potential reasons as to why the game wasn't made. It's fairly possible that BioWare couldn't come up with a good enough pitch for the game. It could be that the pitch was good, but they just couldn't follow through with it. It could be, BioWare couldn't divert resources because they're currently trying to push Anthem. They're working on more Dragon Age. They've rumored that we will see more Mass Effect. So it's very possible that they want to try to focus on their own original IPs. That's very possible. It's also possible that they just didn't want to do more Star Wars games because there was already that other open world Star Wars game. It got canceled. BioWare probably figured, well, hey, if that one's getting canceled, because I'm sure they probably knew well before the public did that the game was going to be getting canceled. So that's also very possible. But I found it interesting that he mentions, perhaps EA's execs said, "Well, okay, but what's your version of FIFA's Ultimate Team?" That should be an underlining problem. Because he also goes on to say, and then EA executives don't really care about single-player games. And that's extremely telling. Because EA hasn't really released single-player content in a long time. Here's to hoping that Anthem will have enough success for BioWare to be able to make the games that they really want to. I hope it works out. But according to a YouTuber, The Quartering, the current review copies of Anthem that are being sent out to game sites and reviewers will have a different difficulty, a toned down game economy, and a bunch more of other stuff that's just completely different. And that they're essentially dumbing down the review copy and making it easier to play in hopes to get a better score. Now, Michael Gamble from BioWare tweeted in response to this, "I've seen some comments about the demo economy being different than the full game. Number one, the demo is not used for reviews of the game. The full game economy is part of the review copies. Okay, it's a demo. Number two, we have been open and honest about this. Number three, the demo is free February 1st, nothing to lose." That's also true. But here's the thing. The demo is supposed to be the gateway that determines whether or not someone will want to purchase the game. So if there are content creators on YouTube or Twitch streamers and they play and showcase this demo, which they will, and the final game is dramatically different, then yeah, people are going to be upset. People are going to look back and say, oh, they did this to sell copies, because that's what it's going to look like. But the fact that they have said that the demo and review copies will have dumbed down controls is telling enough for me. I really wish BioWare can just break off from EA. pull a Bungie, man. Come on, BioWare. Come on. Bungie can do it. You can. Number 3 in the gaming report, 343 Studios has teased an upcoming announcement concerning Halo the Master Chief Collection. This announcement will occur during the HCS Invitational at South by Southwest 2019. Now, what the announcement might entail, 343 was pretty vague. They said, not only will you be treated to amazing matches and gameplay, but we've also got some exciting MCC news to reveal during the show, 343 wrote in their blog post. The HCS Invitational takes place March 15th through 17th and begins each day at 10 a.m. Pacific Time. And if you're not at the event, you can watch both it and 343's Halo announcement on either Mixer or Twitch. I don't understand, like 343, I don't know. I thought the Master Chief Collection was pretty cool. They combined everything all in one game. But this is kind of all they've really been focusing on. From what I've gathered, they haven't really branched out anymore, really, with the Halo IP. And I have a feeling that this is probably just going to be, hey, Halo 5 is going to be part of the Master Chief Collection now. And they might do something with like ODST, maybe? I don't know. I just feel like this 343 is kind of just rinse and repeat at this point with their Halo stuff. I don't know. I'm just not stoked about this. Maybe you are. Maybe you're a huge Halo fan. And if you are, that's cool. You're free to like and enjoy the things that you enjoy. But me personally, I'm not too stoked about this. So number 4 on the gaming report, Overwatch has announced the launch of an exciting fan art contest encouraging designers to submit their best hero skin concepts. This contest will give passionate fans a chance to take their favorite characters from the game and transform them in their own unique image. The competition is set to launch on January 28th and will give creators until February 19th to get their designs in, with a short list of potential prize winners drawn up in that time. You can find more information on the Overwatch Facebook page. Coming from being an artist before and trying to make a name for myself, it's easy to get caught up in contests, and especially fan art, because I feel like while it's cool that they allow the community to become a part of the game, most of these contests involve the companies to be able to claim your art. Like once you submit it, that art is no longer yours. That is now their property. If they choose to, at any time, they can use it for marketing, they can use it for art, they can use it as whatever. So if you submit a character concept skin for Overwatch, it doesn't make the cut, it doesn't win. At any point in the future, Blizzard can say, well, we've got literally hundreds and thousands of character concepts now that we have at our disposal, we can use them, and they essentially can like tweak them and twist them, or just straight up use them. Because I guarantee you, in the terms of service, that's going to be part of it, is that you forfeit all rights to this, and it is then Activision Blizzard property. So if you choose to do this, keep that in mind, because it burned me once with Epic Games and Gears of War. So yeah, getting a cease and desist from Epic for art that I created was totally not fun. So just be warned. And lastly, in the gaming report, one of my buddies and a dedicated listener to the show, Arturo, sent me a link to a video from a YouTuber called Forge Labs, which I checked out his channel. Pretty funny guy, pretty great videos. I highly recommend checking him out. And he posed the question, what happened to video games? And in the video, he dissects the idea that cosmetic items, skins, outfits, what have you, have gotten completely out of hand in the video game industry, with games like Call of Duty and Rainbow Six Siege being the biggest offenders of implementing pointless skins and items to get more from the racket of the microtransaction-fed game industry. He argues a really great point, and one that I wholeheartedly agree with, that these ridiculous cosmetic items completely change the look and the tone and the theme of a game. So when it's a hard, gritty war shooter set in the modern times, and you have a guy in a toga with a Centurion helmet running around, it really kind of breaks and removes you from the immersion of the game. And he brought up a game like Rainbow Six Vegas as a great example of having unlocks that didn't break the immersion, which is true. It had a lot of stuff you could unlock, like different vests, helmet stuff, like all different kinds of gear, which was tactical gear and stuff like that, which was true. That was one of the first games where I personally felt like the immersion got broken. Rainbow Six Vegas, I played on the 360. It was definitely one of my hardcore 360 gaming moments. That was like one of my go-to games, was Rainbow Six Vegas, the first one. And I can't tell you how many times I saw bright pink camo or multicolor camo that looked like a child's finger painting. Because once, it's supposed to be this covert ops type military shooter, and one of the multiplayer end games unlocks was custom camo, and that's how you saw this influx of bright pink and purple or red, like fluorescent yellow, blue, and red custom camo. So it really broke that immersion for me. So I would have to say that would definitely be the first offender for me personally. Now, Forge Labs then brings up the point that games like Overwatch and Halo can get away with it, which I also agree with. Overwatch has always done themed events and released skins and sprays and emotes and stuff like that based on that event. They have like the summer games, the winter themed stuff, the holiday stuff. They have Halloween. They usually do like a Chinese New Year kind of thing. So, and they always release skins based on that. And so they easily get a pass from me on that. And like, as he says in the video, at least in Halo, even if you have different armor or different helmets, you're still a Spartan and not like an anime character running around. So I feel like this is a really good question, especially amidst all the microtransaction controversies that have happened and will continue to happen in the gaming industry. And, one of my other friends had said that, well, this is the future of the gaming industry. And one of the common responses I see to that kind of thing is, no, this is the present of the gaming industry. This isn't the future. So I'm interested to see where the game industry goes, especially in this with the community split. You have like the one community that, well, as long as it's cosmetic, it's okay, which I agree with to an extent. But then you get people who are just whales for loot boxes, and so I don't know. I could probably do an entire episode dedicated to microtransactions and stuff like that, but I'll save that for a future episode when I can have a guest from the gaming industry. So there we go. I have a plan. I'm going to try to do that sometime in the future. So that's the end of the gaming report. In movie news, first up, a few weeks ago, Jeremy Conrad said on Twitter that Marvel could bring the Black Knight to the MCU, saying that the hero will be introduced with the help of the Quantum Realm. Thanks to all the official revelations that followed the premiere of Ant-Man and the Wasp, including the DVD and Blu-ray release, we now know that the realm is more critical to the MCU than we thought. We learned it's not just a place devoid of life, because intelligent creatures are there, including heroes. Now, Jeremy Conrad is back with a more detailed MCU report that offers more evidence that the Black Knight will be in the upcoming Avengers 4 movie. He explains that Marvel releases True Believer comic reprints around the time of a movie release, which are the $1 one-shot comics from a major storyline or event that has some sort of connection to whatever movie is coming out at the time. That way people who are unfamiliar with the characters can catch up with the comics in time for the movie, so they have a general idea and are more familiar with the characters. Marvel has reportedly planned True Believer reprints for Endgame, including standard ones like Ronan and Thanos and Gamora, according to the MCU Cosmic Founder. But there's also one that fans didn't really see coming, me included. Marvel is issuing a reprint of the first issue of the Gatherer saga. This is a short event that began in Avengers number 343 in 1991. I was like 3 years old then. Where the basic concept was that Avengers from alternate timelines are all brought together and Black Knight is involved. Dane Whitman, also known as Black Knight, might be one of the characters populating the Quantum Realm city as seen in Ant-Man and the Wasp. Very interesting. I'm definitely going to be picking up that one-shot comic, kind of brushing up on it and stuff like that before Endgame comes out. And it'll be interesting to see if Black Knight plays a role or not in Endgame. But we'll find out pretty soon. Next up, on movie news, Adam Driver made some comments about Episode 9 in an interview with Deadline when he was asked about his, quote, marathon journey with the sequel trilogy, and here's his response. In the plays that I've done, a 6-month run, on the very last day, you finally feel like, oh, now I have a better understanding of what it is that I want to do. I wish we could do this all over again. Working on a play, the questions you can ask yourself are infinite, and that's what's torturous about film sometimes. You only have one shot to get it right, and you can do a lot of takes, but we're not going to get back together again and do this. But for something you're doing for 6 years, you still have a chance to go back and make something a little bit more articulated. So it's interesting to me that Adam feels so much pressure with this last movie, and I know there was a lot of controversy surrounding The Force Awakens. People were saying it's too similar to A New Hope. And then there was a lot of controversy around The Last Jedi saying it's too different from Star Wars. But they were both box office hits. That being the case, none of the cast of The Last Jedi were really able to avoid the backlash the film received, even though some of the complaints, some, not all, were complete crap. I understand that. Like, you don't want to let your fans down. So he went on to say about the role of Kylo Ren, with Star Wars, I had one piece of information of where it was all going, and that's where it has been in my head for a long time, and things were building towards that. Now, out of all the new sequel characters, Kylo has definitely been my favorite next to Poe Dameron, so I really look forward to seeing what it all builds towards with his character, and how it all culminates to the ending of his story arc. I'm really looking forward to it. And I know a lot of people are like, oh, emo Kylo or emo Solo, like, whatever. Kylo was like one of those characters where his uncle was Luke Skywalker, who is like this famed Jedi, this legend, this living legend. It's his uncle, and he's going there to be taught the ways of the Jedi from his like famous uncle, this legendary person. And more than likely, he probably was a little brat at times. And his uncle was probably extra hard on him because he knew he was probably really strong in the Force, which is kind of what happened with Anakin. The Jedi Council, especially Mace Windu, was a complete asshole to him. Obi-Wan was the only one that really could have been more supportive, and he was at times a complete asshole to him. So, I mean, it's kind of this. I imagine it was probably kind of the same thing with Kylo Ren. He was probably really talented with the Force, but Luke was probably an asshole to him. So, you couple that with his own uncle trying to murder him in his sleep. So, I don't know. His character, I feel like, is a very tragic character. It's a very well written and a well acted character. But I digress. And lastly, on the movie news, on the heels of Netflix saying they're going to be raising prices for their streaming service, let's take a look at what will be coming to and leaving the service this February. I guess producers note, this is my curated list of things that I feel is interesting for the topics that I discuss on the podcast. So, February 1st, we see Jaws, Jaws 2, Jaws 3, and Jaws the Revenge. There's a bunch of other stuff, but it's all a bunch of, like, Hallmark Channel style stuff. February 8th, The Epic Tales of Captain Underpants Season 2. My son finally got me to sit down and watch the Captain Underpants movie with him, and the first season of the show. It's really funny. Like, it's really good. And I remember reading these books growing up when I was in elementary school and middle school, and the show really does the books justice. I think it's great. So, I highly recommend checking that out, whether or not you have kids. February 15th is The Dragon Prince Season 2. I started Season 1 with my son because he's really big into... He loves Avatar The Last Airbender show and The Legend of Korra. We started watching this, and then he got hooked on Star Wars Rebels and Clone Wars, and so we kind of migrated toward that. So we might pick up Season 1 of The Dragon Prince in time to be able to watch Season 2. And that's it. Like, there is a lot of more dramatic type movies, stuff like that. So not much within the scope of the podcast topics coming to Netflix in February. Now here's what's leaving. Black Dynamite, Clerks, Shaun of the Dead, and The Big Lebowski. Pretty uneventful month for Netflix, especially considering they're raising prices. So there's that. And I'm going to end the episode with some tabletop news. So my sister and brother-in-law did a Kickstarter campaign. They backed it for a game called Raccoon Tycoon. Now, this last weekend, I posted on Instagram and I think Twitter? Not sure. But we played the game and it's super fun. So basically the gist of it is you are tycoons. You're trying to buy and sell like wood and stones, wheat, cargo, all these different kinds of things. You buy and sell, and you build properties, you build railroads, you do all this stuff, but it's all like woodland creatures dressed up as like these posh like businessmen and stuff, and like wood pipes and trilby hats and all this stuff. It's super cool, and the art's really well done. The game is fantastic. Like, the quality of everything, the coins are like legit metal coins. They look like actual coins. So cool. So if you can check out that game, I highly recommend it. And lastly, with tabletop news, I've mentioned him a few times before, but I'm a huge fan of Matthew Colville. The guy is fantastic. He's done a lot of work in the game industry. He's written a couple books. He's done some supplemental content for Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. He did like the Dune tabletop RPG. I think he worked on a Star Trek book at one point for tabletop gaming. But anyway, he recently started his own studio, and he is going to be doing a campaign stream, which he's been working on, he's been building up towards, and the stream begins next Wednesday, January 30th at 7 p.m. Pacific time on Twitch. I will put the link to that in the doobly-doo below. So, keep an eye out for that if you enjoy live play D&D streams. So, this concludes this episode of the Scruffy Looking Nerd Herders podcast. Thank you so much for your support. Please, if you like what you heard, like, follow, subscribe, review, all that good stuff. Share it with your friends, your family, people at your comic shop, like whatever. Let them know I'm on iTunes, I'm on Spotify, Stitcher, Podbean. I'm on YouTube now, so you can embed videos, you can share videos. There's so many ways to listen. Be sure to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at SLNH Podcast. And if you swing over to the website, slnhpodcast.com, there's a link where you can click and you can get some merch and that helps support the show. There's stickers, t-shirts, hoodies, all sorts of things. So go check it out. If you want to support the show that way, there will be a link in the description. And thank you so much for all of your reviews, your comments on my posts, the conversations that we have. They're so interesting, and your feedback, it really helps me grow the podcast and get better. So I appreciate that, and I want to thank you for that. And guys, this is Tyler from the Scruffy Looking Nerd Herders podcast signing off, and may the Force be with you.